You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Good morning, I'm Chrissie De Clerck-Szilagyi.
And I'm Jason Szilagyis with today's Caffeinated History with the Szilagyis on the BQN Podcast Collective.
Before we jump into our topic for the day, we'd like to take a moment to thank our BQN Patreon patrons who make our shows possible. Listeners, you can hear your name listed here as one of our associate producers with a monthly subscription of just $10 at patreon.com/BQN. And with a monthly Patreon subscription of $5 or more, you can join in all sorts of fun activities with your collective. Watch your Patreon messages for details. Today's topic is Charlotte E. Ray, the first black woman attorney in the United States. Shout out to Dylan White at Dylan Michael White on Instagram, from whom I first heard about Ms. Ray and whose account everyone should follow. The first African-American woman to practice law in the United States was Charlotte E. Ray. She was born in 1850 in New York City. Her parents, Charlotte Augusta Burroughs and Reverend Charles Bennett Ray, were prominent abolitionists and published the paper The Colored American. Her mother was also a vocal suffragist. The couple made a point of providing a complete education for all 7 of their children, sons and daughters, including college. Charlotte earned a teaching degree in 1869 from the Institution for the Education of Colored Youth, then moved to teaching at the prep school attached to Howard University. Charlotte applied to the Howard University Law School soon after she began teaching. Because she knew they had not yet accepted a woman into the institution and were unlikely to do so, she applied as C.E. Ray. They did not know they had accepted a woman until she began attending classes. Once admitted, however, she was there to stay, and her presence and success there served as precedent for other women who sought admission to law schools and university-level programs across the United States. Upon graduation and passing the bar in early 1872, Ray set up her practice in Washington, D.C. She advertised in black newspapers as a specialist in commercial law, but the case that brought her notoriety, beyond being the first black woman lawyer in the United States, was a divorce case. On the 3rd of June in 1875, she filed with the D.C. District Court, then known as the D.C. Supreme Court, on behalf of Martha Gadley against her husband Daniel. Martha had repeatedly tried to obtain a divorce on the basis of her husband's cruelty and lack of material support. In this era, these were 2 of the very few reasons a woman could seek a divorce, but in a system that did not yet recognize women as fully legal persons, to prove that any violence was beyond the context of a man, quote, correcting his wife, was difficult at best. Despite having been refused by lower courts, Martha had a fairly strong case, including hospital records showing the extent of her injuries at her husband's hands. She also had, in the form of Charlotte Ray, an eloquent advocate who did not hesitate to describe the terrible actions of Daniel Gadley. He was a habitual drunk, often leaving the couple without money for necessities. On one occasion, when Martha complained about this lack, he shoved her out of their front door and locked her out of the house. Ray also described another incident, one imagines and hopes this was the final straw before the divorce, though the records do not say, in which Daniel tried to cause Martha to fall through the floorboards of their second-story bedroom, quote, to break her neck. To do this, he destroyed their bed frame, made her lay down amidst the debris, and then hacked away at the floorboards around her with an axe, thankfully unsuccessfully. The case left no doubt in the judges' minds that Martha Gadley's very life was at risk, and so she was granted the divorce. We do not know what happened to her after this, but one hopes she never had to deal with her ex-husband again. Despite having won this landmark case, Ray kept her focus on business law, but could not maintain enough work to keep her practice going. We know that she married sometime in the 1880s, though virtually nothing is known about her husband other than his surname of Frayne, which Charlotte took. In the late 1890s, she returned to New York and teaching in the Brooklyn school system. Following the family tradition, she was an activist for civil and women's rights. She was a member of the National Association for Colored Women and the National Women's Suffrage Association, and advocated for the women's rights to education, careers, and the vote. Ray died of bronchitis at the age of 60 in 1911. Thank you for listening. We'd also like to thank our History with the Szilagyis Patreon patrons, Pati, Susan Capuzzi-De Clerck, Laura Dell, Kris Hill, Betty Larson, and Vince Locke. Your contributions help us to have the time to research and write what you're hearing, and you can help us just like they do with a monthly subscription at patreon.com/historywiththeszilagyis. Also, thank you to Mark White for the awesome show art and Zach Tripp for the wonderful closing music. Please subscribe in your favorite podcast player, and don't forget to rate and review us there as well. And while you're at it, check out the rest of the great shows in the BQN Collective. We'd love to hear what you think. If you'd like to reach out, you can find our network on Twitter at BQN Podcasts, and this podcast in particular at History Szilagyi. You can also talk about any and all of our BQN podcasts in the Facebook group, the BQN Collective, and in our Discord server. And last but not least, you can find me on the socials at The Goddess Livia. That's TheGoddessLivia.
And me at Jason Dark Elf. We'd love to hear topic suggestions. What would you like to learn on Caffeinated History?